In 1943, to destroy a single factory deep inside Germany, the United States didn't send one bomber, it sent 1,000. 1,000 B-17s filling the sky from horizon to horizon. 10 men in each aircraft. 10,000 young men on a single mission. And on a bad day, 60 of those bombers wouldn't come home. 600 men gone to hit one target. And even then, it often wasn't enough. The bombs fell in a scatter. On a good day, only about a third of them landed within 1,000 feet of the aiming point. So they'd go back the next day, and the day after, losing more men, dropping more bombs, hoping. That was the price of air power for most of the 20th century. Measured in fleets, measured in casualties, measured in whole cities of young men. Now look at this. One aircraft, no formation, no 1,000. Just one black shape moving through the dark. And it can do, in a single pass, what that 1,000-bomber raid could only dream of.
To understand what changed, you have to understand the problem they were trying to solve in 1943. A World War II bomber dropped its bombs from 4 or 5 miles up, using a mechanical sight and a lot of prayer. The bombs were unguided. Once they left the aircraft, wind, altitude, and luck took over. Historians estimate that an average B-17 group put only about a third of its bombs within 1,000 feet of the target. 1,000 feet. That's more than 3 football fields of error, on the good drops. So the only way to guarantee you destroyed something was mass. Send enough bombers, drop enough bombs, and statistics would eventually put enough steel on the target. It was brutal arithmetic. You weren't aiming at a factory. You were burying it under thousands of bombs, and burying your own casualty lists along with it. Now here's the shift. A modern precision bomb doesn't scatter. It's guided by GPS to a specific set of coordinates, and it lands within a few feet of exactly where it's told to. Not 1,000 feet, a few feet. Think about what that does to the math. If one bomb hits exactly what it's aimed at, you don't need 1,000 bombers to guarantee a kill. You need one bomb. One good bomb per target. And that single change from scatter to precision is the entire reason a lone aircraft today can replace a fleet. The bomber didn't just get stealthier or faster, the bomb got smart. And once the bomb got smart, the whole logic of air power flipped. The question became, how many separate targets can one aircraft carry a smart bomb for? For the B-2, the answer is staggering. The B-2 Spirit carries its weapons internally. Nothing under the wings because anything hanging outside would ruin its stealth. Inside those 2 bays, on rotary launchers, it can carry an astonishing load. Up to 80 precision-guided bombs of the 500-pound class. Each one guided, each one able to be assigned to its own target. Let that sink in against 1943. 80 guided bombs from one aircraft in one pass. And if each finds its mark, that's up to 80 separate things destroyed on a single sortie. Not 80 bombers, 80 targets from one jet. In the Second World War, hitting 80 separate targets with confidence could have meant thousands of bomber sorties spread over weeks at a cost of hundreds of aircraft and thousands of lives. The B-2 can address that many aim points before breakfast and fly home. And it scales to the mission. Need to flatten a wider area? Load the smaller guided bombs by the dozens. Need to punch a single hardened target? Load heavier 2,000-pound weapons instead. Need to reach something buried deep underground? In a bunker built to survive anything? The B-2 can carry the largest conventional bomb in the American arsenal, the 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrator. And it's the only aircraft in service built to drop it. That's the first half of the miracle, payload. one aircraft carrying the destructive reach of an entire 1943 bomber fleet, delivered with an accuracy those crews couldn't have imagined. But payload alone isn't what makes the B-2 replace 1,000 bombers. Because 1,000 bombers in 1943 had one thing the B-2 also needs: a way to actually reach the target without being shot down. That's the second half, and it's where stealth comes in. Let's put the two eras side by side, because the numbers tell the whole story. 1943, one strategic target, say a ball bearing factory. To destroy it with confidence, you send a bomber stream. Hundreds of aircraft, sometimes approaching 1,000 when you count the full effort across repeated raids. Each bomber carries 10 men. Each drops unguided bombs, of which roughly a third land within 1,000 feet. You accept that dozens of aircraft won't return. The cost to kill one target, measured in hundreds of aircraft, thousands of airmen, and often several missions before the target actually stays down. Today, that same one target, you send a single B-2, 2 pilots, not 10 men times 1,000. 2. It carries guided bombs that land within feet. One bomb, one target, one pass. The factory is gone before the next morning, and the aircraft is back home. Now widen it. That single B-2 isn't carrying one bomb, it's carrying up to 80. So it isn't replacing one 1943 raid. In a single sortie, it can service dozens of separate targets, each of which, in 1943, might have needed its own 1,000-plane effort. Stack those two columns next to each other, and the shift is almost hard to believe. Thousands of men and hundreds of aircraft on the left. 2 pilots and 1 aircraft on the right. Same job. Sometimes more than the same job. This is what people mean when they say precision changed warfare. It didn't make war gentle. It made mass obsolete.
1,000 bombers in 1943 didn't just carry bombs. They carried each other's survival. They flew in tight boxes so their guns overlapped, protecting the formation. Mass wasn't only about bombs. It was about living long enough to drop them. A single B-2 has no formation to hide in. It has no escorts holding its hand over the target. It survives a completely different way, by not being seen at all. The B-2 is a flying wing. No tail, no vertical surfaces, nothing that bounces a radar signal back the way it came. Its shape, its materials, its edges are all designed to scatter and absorb radar energy instead of reflecting it. To a modern air defense radar, a bomber the size of a commercial airliner can appear as something far smaller, and later, a faint return that shows up too briefly, too close to do anything about. That's the key idea. Stealth isn't a cloak of invisibility. It's a shrinking of the distance at which you can be detected, from hundreds of miles down to almost nothing.
And if the enemy can't see you until you're already overhead, their 1,000-mile air defense network might as well not exist. This is why the B-2 flies at night. Why it's designed to slip through the seams of an air defense system, strike, and be gone before anyone can react. A single aircraft, alone, over the most heavily defended targets on Earth, and the defenses never get a clean shot. Combine the two halves and you have the whole miracle. Precision means one bomb kills one target. Stealth means one aircraft can reach targets a whole fleet couldn't survive. Payload means that one aircraft brings enough bombs for dozens of targets at once. One jet, deep into defended airspace, dozens of targets, and home again. In 1943, that sentence would have sounded like science fiction. Today, it has a service record. This isn't theory. The B-2 has been proving the math for over 25 years. Its combat debut came in 1999 over Kosovo. 6 B-2s flew non-stop from their home base in Missouri all the way to the Balkans and back. 30-hour missions, refueling in the air. And here's the number that captures everything. Those B-2s flew just 50 of the 34,000 NATO sorties in that campaign, a tiny fraction of 1%. Yet they dropped 11% of all the bombs and destroyed roughly a third of the selected targets in the first 8 weeks. A handful of aircraft, a third of the targets. That is the 1,000-bomber fleet compressed into 6 aircraft, and the 6 flew home. In 2017, Two B-2s struck a militant training camp in Libya, dropping over 100 precision bombs in a single coordinated strike, again flying from the continental United States. One night, 2 aircraft, 100+ aim points.
And in 2025, in one of the most demanding missions the type has ever flown, B-2s penetrated deep into heavily defended airspace to strike hardened underground nuclear facilities, using those 30,000-pound bunker busters that no other aircraft can carry. Whatever one thinks of the politics of that operation, as a demonstration of the concept, it was definitive. Targets that were considered nearly unreachable, buried under rock and concrete, struck by a single type of aircraft flying halfway around the world and back. Each of these missions makes the same point the World War II comparison makes. The measure of air power used to be how many aircraft you could put over a target. Now it's how few you need. In every one of these operations, a nation that once would have launched fleets launched a handful, and achieved more than the fleets ever could. But there's a catch, and it's the reason the B-2 story isn't a simple tale of triumph. Here's the catch. The United States built only 21 B-2s ever. The program was supposed to produce 132 of them, but it came at the end of the Cold War. The budgets collapsed, and the order was slashed again and again until just 21 were built, at a total cost of around $45 billion. That works out to roughly $2 billion per aircraft. By some measures, accounting for the whole program, each B-2 costs more than its own weight in gold. And after an accident, the fleet is down to 20 aircraft. Think about what that means next to everything we just said. The same qualities that make the B-2 so powerful, the exotic stealth, the hand-built complexity, also make it incredibly rare and almost impossible to replace. The production line is closed, the tooling is gone. You cannot simply build another one. So every single B-2 represents about 5% of the entire fleet.
Lose one, and you've lost 5% of America's ability to do this mission. In 1943, losing 60 bombers out of 1,000 was a terrible day, but the factories back home built more within a week. Lose a B-2, and there is no replacement coming. Not next week, not next year, not ever for that airframe. This is the paradox at the heart of the aircraft. It is simultaneously the most capable bomber ever flown and one of the most fragile strategic assets in existence. Not fragile in the air, but fragile as a number. A force so concentrated that its greatest strength and its greatest vulnerability are the same fact. There are almost none of them. One B-2 can do the work of 1,000 bombers, which is exactly why losing one hurts like losing 1,000.
The Air Force learned the lesson of the B-2 the hard way, and its answer is already flying. It's called the B-21 Raider. From the outside, it looks like a smaller, sleeker B-2, and it carries the same core idea: a stealthy flying wing that penetrates defended airspace and strikes with precision. But the whole philosophy behind it is a direct response to the B-2's paradox. Where the B-2 was exquisite, hand-built, and impossibly expensive, the B-21 is being designed to be built in numbers. More affordable, easier to maintain, meant to be produced not in dozens, but potentially in the hundreds. The Air Force doesn't want 20 irreplaceable aircraft this time. It wants enough that losing one isn't a strategic catastrophe. In other words, they're trying to keep the miracle, one stealthy jet doing the work of a fleet while fixing the fragility. Precision and stealth, but produced at a scale that can absorb a loss. It's the natural next step in the story that started in that 1943 sky.
First, air power was about mass. Thousands of bombers, thousands of men. Then the B-2 proved that precision and stealth could replace all that mass with a single aircraft. And now the B-21 is trying to take that single aircraft power and make it survivable as a force, not just as a plane. The 1,000-bomber raid is never coming back. What replaced it was one silent wing in the dark, doing more than the 1,000 ever could. And what comes next is a fleet of those wings, finally in numbers. The arithmetic of air power has come full circle. Few aircraft, enormous effect. And this time, enough of them to matter.
So, how can a single B-2 do what 1,000 bombers did in 1943? Because everything that used to require mass got concentrated into one aircraft. The scatter of unguided bombs became the certainty of precision. The protection of a formation became the invisibility of stealth. The bombs of a whole fleet became the payload of one jet. 1,000 aircraft and 10,000 men collapsed into 2 pilots and 1 black wing. It's a staggering achievement of engineering, and it carries a warning inside it. Because when you concentrate the power of a fleet into a single aircraft, you also concentrate all the risk. 20 of them carry a capability the world once needed thousands of bombers to match. That's the strange truth of modern air power. It looks like almost nothing. One shape moving quietly through the dark, where there used to be 1,000. But that one shape carries the weight of history behind it, and the firepower of an entire vanished sky.